So let's talk about gesso. Gesso is a primer. It gets a surface ready to hold paint. You can also use it for pastels or charcoals or even inks. And I just have like a little bit in the bottom of this plastic cup here. It's an Italian word. It means chalk, and historically it was made with chalk and white pigment and a glue. Today we have, thanks to Liquitex in like 1955, we have acrylic gesso, and now there's many companies that make acrylic gesso. It can be sanded, it can be really smooth, or it could be really textured, and it is often made with plaster now, and it really kind of holds the shape that you put it in. So I'm going to start to apply my gesso. I do recommend, if you're going to use gesso many times, that you just kind of get one brush and you dedicate it to that, because it can be a little bit rough on the brushes, having plaster and things in them. I have this brush, which is a little bit more appropriate in size for just a piece of paper. So the gesso is going to protect the surface, which can be called the substrate. So it could be a wood board, it could be a piece of paper, it could be a canvas. So it would help it to prevent from sliding down a wood board. The paint, rather, would not slide down a wood board if you have the coat of gesso on there, or on a piece of paper, for example. It's going to actually help to strengthen it. So this gesso that I have, look at how quickly it painted over that word. This is an artist grade gesso, and that means there's more pigment in it and less of the filler or just the stuff that's binding it together. So when I use this one, I can actually add a little bit of water to it and smooth the gesso out and get it to spread farther. What I would do if I was working on a canvas, something more than just, a sketchbook piece, something more permanent, something that I wanted to hang on the wall, I would probably do 2 or 3 coats of gesso, and I would change the directions each time. So right now, all of my brush strokes are horizontal. I would let this dry, and then I would go in the other direction. So that way the brush strokes will start to even each other out. It can be sanded, so if you wanted it to be like a really smooth surface to paint on without the brush strokes there, after it's dry, you could get a really fine sandpaper and smooth it out. Okay, so you can see my gesso word in pencil is showing through a little bit. I can either live with that and start to paint on this when it's done, or I could do a second coat after it's dry going in the other direction. And then if you are into collaging or mixed media, sometimes it's nice just on a separate piece of paper, whatever little bits you have left, grab your sketchbook, and before, this is a different sketchbook, and before you clean your brush, you can just use all of that gesso, and it just gives a little bit of a protective coating to your piece of paper, a little bit of a tooth. And I don't even have to use this to paint. I could end up using this for charcoal or ink or something else. So I just like to use every last little bit in a sketchbook first, and then I can clean that off by wiping it on the bottom of my container. And then any time we clean a brush in the sink, remember we do the same thing with soap and water, cleaning it on our hands with soap and water, and making sure that when we squeeze this, it's not like milky water at all. We don't want any gesso sitting down here in the furrow, in these bristles, because over time they will coat your bristles and your bristles will start to separate and it will ruin your brush. So make sure that you really clean it all the way down to having perfectly clear water. You can even see that little droplet that just fell is milky, so there's gesso still in my brush. I still have more cleaning to do. And just so you know your options, there are boards that you can buy. This is a pre-gessoed board, and this is by Blick, just an art supply company. And there we go. And then this is the back of it, and then this side has gesso already on there and a little bit of a texture. There. Now you can see the texture up here. And again, if you wanted the texture gone, you could add more gesso over it and then sand that gesso if you wanted absolutely no texture at all. But you can gesso paper, wood boards, lots of different things, and just get them ready for paint. You could even put some gesso on a pair of jeans and then paint on your jeans. So welcome to gesso.